Hello, my name is Callum. I'm a fourth year medical student from the University of Sheffield. I've been studying at Sheffield for 5 years now. So last year I integrated in a BMed Sci, so I had a year out doing a research project instead of doing medicine, which was quite enjoyable.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm one of the F1 doctors. I've just started at Rotherham, and that means that this is basically my first job outside of medical school.
My name's Elliot. I'm a fourth year medical student, but I'm in my fifth year at Sheffield as I took an integrated year out doing a Masters in Anatomy and Education, which is really enjoyable, and the benefit of the course in Sheffield that they allow you to look into other interests outside of medicine.
Hiya, my name's Corey. I'm one of the F1 junior doctors working at Rotherham Hospital.
I'm a postgraduate student, so that means I studied something else first and then came to medicine second. So I did psychology first at Leeds Uni, and this is because my school was quite pushy. They wanted you to go to school, they wanted you to go to university regardless of whether you knew what you wanted to do or not. I enjoyed psychology, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to work in it or not. And then through a lot of placements and work experience in psychology, I decided I wanted to go wider. I enjoyed the more neuroanatomy, and I thought, I don't want to just pigeonhole into psychology.
So why did I choose medicine? I found that medicine's a good mix between science, kind of the academic interests, and human interaction, and also kind of hands-on experience doing clinical skills, etc. So it gives a wide variety to your day and in future career going forward. It's a stable career, and you get variety keeping you interested as you're going through.
So it sounds pretty cliche, but personal experience, I was a patient in hospital as a kid, sort of sparked a bit of an interest back then, fascinated by what the doctors and surgeons were doing at the time. Again, like a lot of my colleagues, we have personal experiences with family, friends who become unwell, and visiting people in hospital and seeing the work they do can often spark that interest, and it did so for me. When I was in secondary school, the university came round and offered a scheme where you explore your interest in medicine, you go up to university, and it sort of spread from there really. I went into university a few times, read about what you do on the medical course, and it was great. I loved it, and it just went from there. I got more experience as time goes on, work experience, did more reading, and made the decision really that I can't think of anything else I'd really want to do, to be honest. I was really interested in medicine and wanted to explore it further.
Basically, I found Sheffield a really friendly place. When I visited, I found it very friendly. At the interview, they cared about you as a person. Other universities, you felt like a number. They were more bothered in research and meeting the statistics. Whereas Sheffield just had a nice, friendly vibe about it. All the students there seemed quite happy and quite friendly. So yeah.
So I decided to come to Sheffield because it's a city which has a mix of the city life but also the countryside life. So we are about a 10-minute drive away from the Peak District. I'm quite into road biking, I quite like walking. So this gives a perfect opportunity to go out to the peaks on a weekend, enjoy the peaks with my friends. But also the nightlife in Sheffield is really good. I had friends who came to Sheffield before me who enjoyed the nightlife and the student life, which got me interested. And the course itself, so what does Sheffield Medicine offer that most courses don't around the country? So we offer a dissection which is done by students rather than pro sections, which are where students watch the dissection itself. That was a big point for me. Also, Sheffield's really big on intercalated degrees, which are degrees you take out for a year to do a research project or do a teaching course. Sheffield pushes this massively, and this interested me before I came to study at Sheffield.
So, a bit about what it's like to study medicine. Medicine's generally quite busy, but I quite like having things to do. And there's lots of time outside of medicine to explore other interests, so I engage in a lot of societies, which gives me a bit of variety in my day and in my life, and it keeps everything fresh and interesting for me. Medicine is hard. You have to put in a lot of hours to do well in medicine, but ultimately it's worth it for the personal progression you get and the job at the end of it.
In a brutal honesty opinion, I would say it is hard work. I know people at school will say, oh, it's hard work, and you think, oh, I want the full uni experience, I want to be going out, I want to be drinking, I want to be going to the parties. But in reality, if you want to succeed, you do have to work hard. So in your first year, the hours are roughly 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, but you'll have a lot of work to do outside of that. So you'll find that most evenings you'll be studying on weekends, or you'll have assignments, or sometimes some of the lectures haven't been that useful, so you'll need to look up that information yourself and find a better way of learning it. In your first year, you also get to study anatomy. Certain universities, they do dissection, where basically people who've passed away have donated their bodies to medical research, so you get to dissect, you get to see all the internal organs and how it works, and for some people that really suits them. For others it's a bit daunting, a bit scary, but it's a really good way of learning anatomy. But yeah, I'd just say it's hard work. I'd encourage you to be really organised, not let the work pile up. So yeah.
So it's a difficult course of study, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So the 6 years I've been at university, you have to control how you learn. So you don't want to do too much too soon, because you will get burnt out and tired out. But the course also offers a chance for you to get involved with different societies, whether that's academic societies or sports societies. So you do have free time on the weekends or evenings to do things you enjoy and hobbies you enjoy, which is really important in medicine, whether that's as a student or in the future career, because you need things to enjoy and just release really the stress that you get from the job and the career itself.
When our job pattern is split into as normal day on the wards and then when we're on call. So the day on the wards, we turn up, we prepare the list for ward round, we put out the bloods, we go around the ward reviewing all the patients on the ward with either the consultant or the registrar. We make a plan for those patients, find out how they're going on with the progress, examine them, make a management plan. We often have, well, then it's dinner time, and then we have either teaching at dinner or some educational activity, or we go up to the mess and socialise with our colleagues. Come back downstairs in the afternoon, and the afternoon is focused on doing the jobs generated from the ward round. So they can be things like sorting out the medications for discharge, ordering scans like chest x-rays, reviewing blood results, prescribing new medications, or discussions with families and updating them on progress. When we're on call, we do on calls roughly every few weeks. They're normally 12-hour days, either in the middle of the week or the weekend. So in the week we do blocks of 4, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 12-hour days or 12-hour nights, and then weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we tend to do 4 or 3 days on call in a row, and things that we do there is clerk new patients, review unwell patients on the wards, do any ward jobs that are generated out of hours, things like prescribing fluids, checking blood results. So reviewing unwell patients is a core part of what we do on call, and that can often be quite fun. Some acute situations where you have to think on your feet and think outside the box as well.
So I would offer the advice to go and visit the universities and understand what the course is about at each university, and talk to people who are doing the course as students or faculty members who are running the course. You can understand what you're getting yourself in for, because 5 years is a long time to sign up for a course which you may not enjoy. So the best thing to do is really look into the course and make sure it's for you, really. And also the city itself. So whatever university you want to apply for, make sure you visited the city and you've looked around the city and spoke to people who've lived in the city for that kind of years, just to understand how they've enjoyed the city itself, and whether they would recommend applying to certain cities, or whether they would recommend applying for other cities itself. And just smash your exams, really, because at the end of the day you need certain grades to get into medicine, and without those grades, unfortunately, you might not get into medicine. So concentrate on your exams, and then of course prepare for interviews, which is a big part of the application itself. And each university will have different interviews and different interview types. So research what interviews the university has, just so you can get informed about how to prepare the best for those universities. And do some work experience as well. You want to, if possible, get some work experience in hospitals, where you can experience how doctors work or how other medical professionals work. But also care homes, anything in a care environment would be useful for an application as well.
Do plenty of research online. Make sure you know what the courses are, what the structure of the courses are. Are they lecture based? There's a type of learning called like PBL, where they give you a clinical problem, and then for that week you work as a group to solve that problem. So I guess it depends whether you prefer the traditional style of teaching, or whether you prefer to work out problems yourself or as part of a team. In terms of preparing for medicine, to make your application really good, the kind of work experience you need, or I'd definitely advise doing. For me personally, the best experience is working as a healthcare assistant. So between my 2 degrees, I worked as a healthcare assistant in Leeds on a gynae oncology ward. So you were actually caring for patients frontline. You got to learn how to do manual handling, washing, dressing, toileting, taking bloods, putting cannulas in. Really useful skills, which I'll be honest, that's probably prepared me more for medicine than being sat in lectures 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Certainly in terms of having confidence on the ward, confidence speaking to patients and building that relationship with them. Other good work experiences, I'd say maybe write to your GP and ask if you could spend a week shadowing them, because GP medicine is very different to hospital medicine.
So some personal advice on things to think about when applying to medicine. First thing I'd say is try and be informed as much as possible as you can about the course in the individual universities. They vary quite dramatically. So you need to think about whether or not the course suits you and your learning style, and whether or not you can see yourself doing that for 5 years. Similarly, you need to think about the city itself, because you've got to live there for 5 years plus. So go and visit the city, go on the open days, go and experience the culture, the lifestyle. Go talk to students that are at the university, see what they think about it, and talk to faculty members. There'll be loads floating around on open days. See what their thoughts are, what they recommend you do, and whether or not the course suits you. So ultimately, just be well informed about your decisions that you're making.
If you are interested in medicine, do explore options, read online, talk to people you know, speak to your colleges and sixth forms. Try and get lots of people's opinions on what they think of the job as a whole. There's lots of bits online. Some places do mentoring programs where you can talk to medical students and doctors. Try and get a feel for the pros and cons of the job, and if you feel like this would be something you would want to look into. I would advise you get experience quite early on. I know lots of opportunities can present themselves at different times. even in sixth form and college, you can do things like attachments to GPs or hospitals or voluntary work, and it's all stuff that stands you in good stead. I'd read what's topical in the news, see if that sparks any interest in medicine. Obviously at the minute with all the coronavirus, just read as many different things as you can. Have lots of input from various people, and that will give you a good picture of what this career is like. But I'm glad I've pursued this, and there is a lot to consider. There is a lot to the job to think about in terms of work-life balance, what sort of things you'd want to do in the career. But it is a very fulfilling career, and I would consider it. Yeah.
So a few tips for medical interviews. So firstly, I'd say try and be informed about what the interview is going to involve. Different universities do it differently. So here in Sheffield we do multiple mini interviews, which are multiple stations on separate little topics. Those questions are released ahead of time so you can prepare yourself. But it's important to be authentic to yourself and come across as a human, because ultimately in medicine we're trying to recruit human beings, because you've got to interact with patients on a daily basis. So try not to be too robotic, and just come across as your natural self. As a previous interviewer, those are the kind of people that I look to give high marks to.
So I think you need to research what particular type of interview university does. So Sheffield itself does multi-mini interviews, which consist of small, roughly 8-10 minute interview stations on particular questions, whereas other universities can do panel interviews. So you need to understand what type of interview the university is offering to understand how to come across and how to answer particular questions in the interview. So that's a first point I'd offer. A second point is be yourself. I've been on the interviews for Sheffield for a number of years, and the best students that come across are just people who are honest about themselves and honest with their answers. You can sometimes tell from students who have learned answers robotically and come across as robots compared to those who have just spoken from the heart sometimes, and these students generally do a lot better in interview than those that just remember answers. A third point I'd include as well is that Sheffield offer the interview questions on the websites beforehand. So look at these questions carefully, and create practice answers for these questions, or practice them in front of parents, friends, and other family members or teachers, just to see where you could improve on the answers in particular, whether that's the content or how you express the answers. So these are all points which could help you in the interview itself. But a big point as well, and the final point, is to don't be disheartened if interviews go badly. So I didn't get into medicine first time, and I had plenty of bad interview experiences, but it only takes one good experience to get an offer. So don't be disheartened if you don't get an offer from a particular interview. Just look how you can improve and ask for feedback, and improve for the next interview you're going to get, whether that's in the same year or you reapply again the next year, because persistence is key in medicine. I think it looks really good in application for students. Try it again and improve in a particular way. So these are all the points I would offer for a medical school interview.
It sounds a bit cheesy, but be yourself. They'll work out if you're telling fibs, or if you're trying to be something that you're not, or you're telling a story about something which happened which didn't. So yeah, just be yourself, be honest, be confident but don't be arrogant, be polite, show interest, maybe do a little bit of research on the unis that you're applying to, whether that's the course structure or the area itself. I know in my interview I got asked a bit about the history of Sheffield, the city, which other than the steelworks and the Peak District I knew very little about, and that caught me off guard a little bit. They will always ask you what are the qualities that you'd expect a doctor to have, or what qualities do you have that you think will make you a good doctor. So it's kind of good to prepare those answers. You know, you don't want to come across as a recited answer, but you need to have a few ideas in your head of how you're going to approach that question. I'd just say get a good night's sleep beforehand. Make sure you arrive early. You need to account for any last minute panics with public transport. I know it might be a little bit different with the COVID situation at the minute and interviews might be online, but if that's the case, just make sure your webcam's working 20 minutes beforehand. Make sure your internet connection's fine, make sure you're in a room where you're not going to be disturbed. Also look presentable. Like, someone told me that it's always good to go to an interview dressed as the job that you're going for. So you would expect a doctor to be well presented, you know, not necessarily shirt and tie, but in terms of, for girls, a blouse or just something a bit smart, not jeans and trainers and crop tops, that kind of thing.
I know that interviews can be quite nerve-wracking. I experienced it myself at interviews. Just you've got to appreciate that everybody's on the same playing field when you get to interviews. You've all got the grades, you've all got the academic prowess to get to interviews. So just go in there, try and show the best of yourself, and I'm sure you'll come across well. Similarly, if an interview doesn't go well, it's not the end of the world. I had bad interviews, I didn't get into medicine first time. So persistence is quite key in trying to get into medicine. Applying second time round shows commitment to medicine, which looks well on application. So if an interview doesn't go well, it's not the end of the world. Just pick yourself up, go to the next interview, learn from it, and try and do better. So just to kind of inform you a little bit about how the course is structured in Sheffield. You spend your first year looking at normal physiology and how that may integrate into pathology, so wider medicine. So you undertake cadaveric dissection in anatomy and have lectures on physiology related to that. In your second year, you try and integrate this into pathology, so learning about diseases in medicine. You also undertake practical sessions like microbiology sessions, and you kind of build upon knowledge that you learned from first year to applicable knowledge for a career of medicine. From second year onwards, so third, fourth and fifth year, you're in clinical placements the whole time with some teaching in between to inform you about what you're meant to be learning on those placements and the practical aspects of it. These third, fourth and fifth years are really geared towards making you a medical professional, but they are time consuming, and you have to travel to placements that are not in Sheffield sometimes, so you may end up in Barnsley, Doncaster, and perhaps a little bit further. But this gives you a good diversity and experience, and ultimately it makes you quite a good professional at the end of it. So think about this for the interview, because they may ask you what you particularly like about Sheffield, the course itself. So if you know the interesting aspects for yourself, so you may like anatomy, you may like clinical practice and what that holds for you, perhaps bring that out in the interview, and I think an interviewer would be quite impressed.
Basically in first year it was all the normal physiology, so the normal workings of the body. You got to do dissection, I think it was either 2 days a week. You got to go into the microbiology labs and do practical sessions there. You'd have occasional assignments, and then you had exams in the summer. Second year was all the weird and wonderful pathologies, so you get to, once you've learnt how the normal workings of the body are, they teach you all the diseases and the kind of things that you'll be treating in second year. Also within your first and second year you have a GP placement, which is 1 day per week, just to give you a little bit of an introduction where you get to speak to some patients and learn about certain topics. From third year, that's when you do your proper clinical placements. We did a 6-week medical placement and then a 6-week surgical placement, so you got to see a mixture of both medical and surgical problems, and that was really, really useful. You did feel like you were being thrown in at the deep end, but it was brilliant. I think that's when you realise that that's what you've come into medicine for, rather than being sat in a lecture theatre all the time. Yeah, fourth year is more placement, but they're a bit more specialist placements, so things like obs and gynae, paediatrics. We did all the little specialties as well, so things like ophthalmology, ENT, rheumatology, orthopaedics, so a little bit more niche sort of topics. And then we also did A&E and anaesthetics, and A&E was by far my favourite placement in terms of learning clinical skills, so getting practice doing bloods, cannulas, catheters, ABGs, everything, and I think that is the placement which made me most prepared for starting as an F1. And then in final year you do 2 placements of 4 weeks, and then you're basically you're preparing for your exams for the finals, and then you do a 6-week placement where you're shadowing the job that you go into. So we didn't have that, but we are here early in Rotherham working in the job that we're going to be doing in August anyway.
So it's a degree offered by the universities for medical students, which is normally a year long, which involves you completing, for instance, a research project or a master's in teaching and anatomy. So there's a wide variety of topics you can integrate in. And this is offered by most medical schools now, actually, and it's taken up by a majority of students now. And it offers those students who didn't do a degree before medicine to complete a degree in research or teaching, just to enhance their kind of portfolio for when they apply for jobs. I did a research project in traumatic brain injury in my year out, which involved a research project with a professor where I'd attend certain lectures on statistics and how to write research papers, and I created a research paper at the end of the year, which hopefully will be published quite soon. But this offered just a different way of life, because you can study medicine and become an academic, which involves you getting involved with research while doing clinical work. And it also, when you're applying for your foundation jobs, which are jobs after university, something like this looks really good on your application, and can offer you extra points if you want to get into certain particular cities or particular hospitals for the future jobs.
So I studied a Masters in Anatomy with Education during my year intercalated degree. I gained some general skills in anatomy, which is applicable to medicine more widely, but I also learned some educational skills and gained some accreditation through that. This is going to offer me some really good opportunities in the future, because education is useful in most aspects of medicine, and I think intercalation offers a good year to explore your own personal interests. There's people who study philosophies, who study medical related research projects, so there's a wide variety for the diverse student cohort that we have in Sheffield.
If you want to do another degree and have a special interest in something else, so intercalation basically means that either after 2nd or 3rd year you come off the medical course and you can do any topic that you want for a year. So you basically do the equivalent of a degree in a year, so you often have to do a dissertation or submit some kind of thesis, and it's normally either a bachelor's or master's degree, but that also helps you for when you apply for your foundation jobs, as it gives you extra points on the application system. I didn't do it personally because I'm a postgrad and I already have a psychology degree, so I've been a student long enough already.
So the intercalation itself is quite a nice break for medicine. So I was studying medicine for about 3.5 years before I intercalated, and by that point you do get a little burnt out and you do want a little bit of a change. So I wanted to do something a little bit different, which was kind of out of my comfort zone and I hadn't really tried before. And as a med student, you don't really get much chance to do a research project if you haven't already done a degree before. So this was a perfect opportunity for me to get involved in research. And out of it, I've been to international conferences, I've presented my work, and like I said before, hopefully it will get published later on this year.